as the credibility and the once proud reputation of the Department of Justice lies in tatters at the feet of the Attorney General Pam Bondi, as career prosecutors resign and stream out in the last 48 hours in response to the cover-up related to Renee Good's cold-blooded murder. Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche, her number two, along with Lindsay Halligan, the hand-picked prosecutor who was fired by the Eastern District of Virginia for being illegally appointed. They've joined together to attack yet another federal judge, this time a Trump-appointed federal judge, and Judge Novak in the Eastern District of Virginia, because he decided he'd had enough with Lindsay Halligan running around identifying herself as the U.S. attorney when she is not the U.S. attorney, because she was declared not to be a U.S. attorney by Judge Curry in that same district a day or so before Thanksgiving. And he has threatened her, rightly so, Lindsay Halligan, with sanctions, including bar sanctions and being barred from operating in his courtroom unless she explained herself, rather than explain herself in a new filing, a new pleading that she actually, Lindsay Halligan, had the balls to sign as they attack this federal judge in open defiance of decisions made by federal judges in that district. We now have open warfare between the Department of Justice and federal judges in the Eastern District of Virginia. I'm going to bring it to you right here on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. I'll read to you from their filing, which the judge required to come in today, signed by Lindsay Halligan with her title, and she continues to use her title, even though the purpose of the order by Judge Novak a week ago was to warn Lindsay Halligan that if she doesn't strip herself of that title, if she doesn't in effect resign, he is going to determine that she has violated ethical obligations of a lawyer and perhaps bar her, ban her, take away her license to operate in his courtroom. And so rather than concede, we see this theory that we've heard before, that the Department of Justice and the executive branch gets to make its own interpretations about the law, and they're not bound by that of what the federal judges have to say. So when Judge Curry said that a vacancy has been created by her ruling, by firing Lindsay Halligan as being improperly appointed, no, the executive branch doesn't agree with that. They have their own interpretation of the law, and therefore they're going to ignore it, openly flout it. This is contumacious conduct. This should be grounds for contempt. And we'll follow it right here on MeidasTouch Network. Let's get to the United States' response that was just filed in the wake of other catastrophes happening at the Department of Justice in the last 24 hours. Mass resignations at the Civil Rights Division because Harmeet Dillon, who has run that into the ground, that once proud organization, the Department of Justice, won't investigate criminally or civilly whether the constitutional rights of Renee Good were violated when she was cold-blooded murdered by an ICE agent. Civil Rights Division would go after somebody in the past, like Derek Chauvin, who sat on and crushed the life out of George Floyd, also in Minnesota. But Harmeet Dillon let it be known before the investigation is even concluded, her office is going to go dark. Well, that led to a mass set of resignations, a half a dozen at least, leaving that office in the last 24 to 48 hours. On the same thing, just today, Joe Thompson, the lead prosecutor, the acting U.S. attorney in Minnesota, resigned rather than investigate the widow of Renee Good on trumped-up manufactured criminal allegations. She's still grieving from the loss of her murdered wife. Have we no shame in the Department of Justice? And reporting that Pam Bondi is on the way out, and Todd Blanche waiting in the wings to take over. And all of that comes together with this filing by Lindsay Halligan, signing it as the U.S. attorney. Also, one last thing. In the last 24 hours, Robert McBride resigned from this very office with Lindsay Halligan. He was brought in to babysit her, to be effectively the U.S. attorney. He's the one that's been meeting with the Eastern District of Virginia judges the way a prosecutor would, right? But he resigned because he told them, I can't prosecute James Comey and run this office at the same time. You'll have to choose one. And they chose to show him the door. What I just outlined is the last 48 hours of unmitigated chaos at the Department of Justice led by Pam Bondi / Donald Trump. Now, the order by Novak that kicked this whole thing off, Judge Novak, is on the 6th of January, which we reported on. Let me read it to you here, and we'll post it up on Legal AF Substack again. This comes before the court on its own initiative. The court's reviewed the indictment in this particular case, having nothing to do with anything. It just happens to be the person that the indictment was concerning. And he wants to know why, despite a binding court order entered by senior United States District Judge Cameron McGowan Curry, in which Judge Curry found that the appointment of Ms. Halligan as interim U.S. attorney violated 28 United States Code 546 and the appointment clause, she continues to hold herself out and ignore the order and hold herself out as the U.S. attorney, and directed them by today to tell the judge how Halligan, signed by Halligan, has not violated about 6 or 7 different rules of professional responsibility and ethics, and why he should not sanction her for misconduct and discipline, including denying her the ability to practice before him in his courtroom. And he wanted the pleading signed by Miss Halligan. Now, Judge Curry could not have been more clear. When she ruled that Halligan was out in a 25-page opinion dated on the 24th of she made the following statement after her analysis. On page 28, the appointment of Ms. Halligan as interim U.S. attorney violated 28 U.S.C. section 546 and the appointments clause, but that's not all. She said also in number 6 of her order on page 29, the power to appoint an interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia during the current vacancy lies with the district court until a U.S. attorney is nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. In other words, her order created and acknowledged a vacancy that needed to be filled, that has not been filled. And yet, despite that, wait till you hear what Bondi, Blanche, and Halligan say to Judge Novak. No, scream at Judge Novak. Let me read it to you now. Let's start from the back. It's always a great place to start. In their conclusion on page 9, to answer the court's inquisition directly, already you're starting off on the wrong foot, the basis for Ms. Halligan's identification of herself as the U.S. attorney, notwithstanding Judge Curry's contrary ruling, which I just read you, is that in the government's view, Ms. Halligan is the United States attorney, and Judge Curry's ruling did not and could not require the United States to acquiesce to her contrary and erroneous legal reasoning outside of those cases. What the F are they talking about? They tried the same trick with Alina Habba in New Jersey. Almost the exact same rationale. It was rejected by a judge, just like Judge Curry. It went up to the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. They affirmed it, and Alina Habba had to resign. Judge Schofield, in the last 5 days, last 3 days, just fired John Sarcone, the Northern District of New York prosecutor, for the exact same reason. You don't get to pick and choose as the executive branch which orders you're going to comply with. Well, I would comply with that order, but we disagree with it. We think that Lindsay Halligan is an Easter bunny, and we're going to continue to treat her like an Easter bunny, even though we know that is out and out, outlandish, and psychologically impaired. You don't get to make your own decisions about the law. That's what the black robe is for. That's what our separation of powers is for. That's what Article 3 judges are for under our Constitution. They go on. They double down in this area of flouting the rules and the power of this federal judge, which again is also complicit in this disrespect of the rule of law and federal judges. This comes from the United States Supreme Court, constantly empowering Donald Trump to flout rules, constantly undermining district court judges and appellate court judges and their credibility, not just with the public, but with the Trump administration. So this is also laid at the feet of the Supreme Court. Here's what they continue to say. The reasons why this court should not strike Ms. Halligan's identification are that no authority exists for a court to strike an attorney title out of a signature block, and certainly not on its own motion. Again, they are missing the point. It is not about the signature block. This is a straw man argument created by Bondi, Blanche, and Halligan. What Judge Novak said is, it's almost an order to show cause why I shouldn't find you have violated this list of ethics rules and bounce you from my courtroom. Joining 6 other judges within the Eastern District of Virginia, from magistrate judges all the way to the chief judge, Brinkema, all questioning aloud why Lindsay Halligan is still impersonating a U.S. attorney. Finally, they continue at the conclusion, Ms. Halligan's identification does not constitute a false or misleading statement. It is correct and consistent with the Department of Justice's internal guidance. We told ourselves it's okay, so it's okay. Then they go on to attack the judge, continue to attack the judge in this filing from the very beginning, from the get-go. Here's page 1. In violation of the rules of criminal procedure and the principle of party presentation, the court has initiated inquisition into whether it should strike Ms. Halligan's title from the signature block. No. Further, should it discipline Lindsay Halligan for her impersonations? Then they miscite Judge Curry's order, which I've now read to you on page 2. Judge Curry did not issue any remedy beyond the 2 cases. Judge Curry did not issue a declaration that Lindsay Halligan was illegal and that, how do you read page 25 of her order, Lindsay Halligan? How do you read number 6? Section 6 of her order. The power to appoint a U.S. attorney during the current vacancy lies with the judges of the Eastern District. Now, they didn't do it. And there's 2 faults here. Curry, I think, could have tightened up her order and should have issued a clarifying order about the vacancy, but I think it's pretty clear from the reading. And the judges of the Eastern District should have stepped forward and tried to fill that position. If Donald Trump didn't like it, he could fire them like they did Alina Habba, and they were off and running in court. So 2 little tactical errors there that I think ultimately need cleanup. But for them to say over and over again that we don't have to respect the ruling of the judge, that the judge was wrong, that we disagree, and therefore we don't have to comply, is just balls out, mad as a hatter. Judge Novak, based on this, should start contempt proceedings against the Trump administration. If they don't like it, they can go finish their appeal related to Judge Curry's order. They can take an appeal and try to stop Judge Novak, like the way they stopped Chief Judge Boasberg in the District of Columbia against it. But we need to chop this wood. And we're going to continue to do it right here on Legal AF and on the MeidasTouch Network. I'm Michael Popak. Take a minute, slide over to the Legal AF YouTube channel and Substack, and consider becoming a paid member. Until my next report, I'm Michael Popak. Can't get your fill of Legal AF? Me neither. That's why we formed the Legal AF Substack. Every time we mention something in a hot take, whether it's a court filing or a oral argument, come over to the Substack. You'll find the court filing and the oral argument there, including a daily roundup that I do called, wait for it, Morning AF. What else? All the other contributors from Legal AF are there as well. We got some new reporting. We got interviews. We got ad-free versions of the podcast and hot takes. Where? Legal AF on Substack. Come over now to free subscribe.